Financial markets continue on their downward trend and downward sentiment as we head into the weekend. There's a couple headlines that I think are really, really dominating everything, and I want to go over these with you guys. Take a look at this first. First Republic's $30 billion rescue fails to soothe investor fear. And we can take a look at also, this is another massive thing happening. SVB Financial files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. And this was like the 16th largest bank. It's pretty crazy. Also, too, we have bank failures like earlier shocks raising odds of recession. We've been talking about recession for quite a while, but now it seems like this may be the catalyst that really pulls us into it. More headlines. First Republic shares fall more than 20% despite deposit infusion, dragging down other regional banks. You have the charts here, you guys can see. We're talking about Fifth Third, KeyBank, Zions, PacWest, First Republic. Stocks decline broadly after First Republic cuts dividend. For those new to the channel, my name is Chris. I was a professor for about 10 years, and I'm pushing 50. I mention this is because I've seen this before. I know there's sometimes people are like, what the heck? Is he that old? Yes. I'm a lot older than I look. And one of the things that I think is so important is that when you've seen these things before, is to share the experiences and to share it with others, because this is a reality. There's a lot of young kids out there that haven't seen this before. They don't know how bad it can get. The other thing, too, which is frustrating, and this is both TV, YouTube, anything, to where, like, things go down like crazy. And people's like, okay, panic, sell everything. And then the next day, things bounce back up. And they're like, oh, see, I told you, everything's great. You should have bought the dip. Everything's fine. And then it goes back down again. Panic, right? And then it repeats and it goes back up. Oh, see, I told you, should have bought the dip, right? And frankly, guys, I don't do that. I'm just like looking at these things the whole time. I've been saying this stuff all week. One, trust no one. Two, I don't know what to believe. Meaning that when these banks put up this press release and say, okay, guys, everything's fine. I'm reading this. I'm like, I don't know, right? This is basically my sentiment. And mostly because it's has to do with essentially protecting your downside risk, right? Managing risk. Because yes, the last couple of days you could have made money on trades on these banks, right? You totally could have, like I said, up 20%, down 20%, and it's been like that every single day. However, it's just so unstable, and this is really an unhealthy market. And having lived through this kind of stuff before, I honestly don't trust any of it. One thing that's going on as well is just like people are worried about our whole system. And also, too, I want to talk with you about regulations. I made a video earlier this week about, unfortunately, and to say unfortunately because there's some people out there who want to say, this is all about to do with being a woke bank and wokeism, and that's essentially causing the financial crisis. And I just look at this and I'm just like, what are you people talking about? Are you crazy? Because the reason why is that I believe that regulations deter bad actors, right? And if you don't have strong regulations, then people just sort of test the limits of what they can do. Let me give you guys a simple example. So let's say you live in a city and there's a whole bunch of car wrecks, right? And you're like, oh my God, okay, we got all these car wrecks, what are we going to do? And some people say, well, no, we don't have to do anything. It's just, we just got a lot of bad drivers. That's the problem. It's nothing to do with our laws or anything. It's just a bunch of bad drivers. And it's just part of society. What can we do? And I'm always like, what are you talking about? That's my opinion on that. Because here's some ideas of regulations. Maybe we should have a speed limit. Okay. Maybe, right? If people are taking corners way too fast, we should have really, really big signs. And moreover, if you're taking corners too fast, we need to make the fines really big if you say go over said speed limit. Or, another example is like, maybe we need to make it so that, you have to have people of a certain age to drive cars. Because it's kind of funny just talking about the car example. Looking back, when I was 16, I was young and stupid at 16. And I know a lot of people were, and the car was like a toy. If you guys remember these things, and some of the things you used to do as a kid, and maybe even still do it now, you're like, you have your favorite corner that you're driving through and you try to see how fast you can go on that thing. And it even used, we used to do this when we were kids, you e-brake, skids and cookies and this kind of stuff. And yes, it's fun and cool and all fun and games until someone gets hurt. And until you've sort of had these experiences, be it in financial markets, be it, say, driving a car, because it's, something we all identify with, is you don't realize the dangers. And also, too, you don't realize sort of how, it affects other people. It is a real thing. You can talk about any number of things where, I think we need regulations, but in particular, financial markets need to be heavily regulated because we've seen this before. If you lived through 2008, you'll know that essentially banks were giving out subprime mortgages to all kinds of people. anyone and everyone, you didn't have to show proof of anything. And hey, you get, 5 mortgages, this kind of stuff. It was a real problem and essentially crashed the whole system due to greed, due to corruption, and due, in my opinion, not enough regulations. And I say my opinion because I understand, guys, we can all have different opinions. That we can, and I'm fine with that. But I think we should be talking about regulations. Now, some people say, Chris, going back to say the bad actor thing, Chris, it's just a bunch of bad actors, right? It's just a bunch of bad actors doing bad things, and we need to punish those bad actors, and then after that, everything will be fine. The thing is, guys, is if you just go with okay, it's just a bunch of bad actors, it doesn't solve the whole problem, right? Yes, you may say, okay, SVB is a bunch of bad actors, but how does that explain First Republic? How does that explain Credit Suisse? How does that explain Silvergate, right? These are just like multiple banks that were carrying headline news, and there may be others. This could get really bad. And, I don't want to give the sense of like, oh my God, panic. I just say manage risk, meaning that if you do want to be in the markets, you put some of your money in there. It doesn't mean you YOLO on anything. The one of the best advice I have for anyone out there is take the sure bets, take the sure things, right? So the world that we live in right now, I mean, I think the sure thing is like pay off credit cards, or we're talking about money, say, or sure thing, start paying down your mortgage, or sure thing, and this is a very real thing. Yeah, and I'll tell you the truth. If you want to say do 20% this year, or maybe even double your money this year, your best bet right now is get a raise. Your best bet right now is get a promotion. Your best bet right now is have job skills where people will pay you more money. And I know a lot of other channels don't talk about that stuff. Why? Because it's tough to give people real advice. It's really, really tough to do that. Because the average person, who watches YouTube just wants to get rich quick, right? They want to say, okay, Chris, just tell me what to buy so I can, 5x my money by just sitting on my couch doing nothing. And I just feel like, in this market, good luck with that. Part of what else is what's going on as well, and we're talking about, say, the YouTube situation where, if you guys know, there's a bunch of YouTubers are getting sued, is that we're talking about financial markets, right? And they're going to try to wiggle out of it, and who knows, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But one of the things that's sort of why I'm so hard on these kind of people is, guys, I do this stuff every day on YouTube. I do it every single day. And every single day on YouTube, and this is the same thing with anything in your life, you actually see the effects of what you do. I see it in comments, right? I see it in the relationships that we build with people on this channel. And ultimately, you have to decide, and anything that you do is like, what kind of things do you want to tell people? Like, how do you want to treat people? How do you sort of want to carry yourself? And how well do you want to sleep at night? I think all of these things sort of tie in together. Like, for example, talking about the sleeping at night thing is like, with the markets being so unstable, and people say, what should I do with my, what should I do with my money? If you're overcommitted on anything in this market, it's going to be just really, really, really bad for your health. People really rank. Like if I say, for example, I had 100% of my money in First Republic, and I saw we up 20%, like sort of the emotion you feel to the upside, be like, oh my God, I am the genius. And then after that it goes down 20%, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to go bankrupt. My wife's going to divorce me. Like just imagine the sort of like emotional roller coaster that you would be on. And to be perfectly frank, it's really, really obvious on YouTube, or even also two guys on Wall Street say you watch TV, you can kind of see like the people's in their eyes, like how much they're stressing out, because most likely if you have a lot of money tied up into this very, very risky stuff right now, which is what I would say a lot of this stuff is really risky right now, be it, say, the banks, for example, yes, you're probably sweating bullets right now, 100%. Or if you over leverage yourself, meaning that you bought too many houses, you bought too many private jets, you hired too many employees, and this could be companies as well, that a lot of over hiring out there, along with a lot of people say over leveraging. Yes, you're freaking out if the markets aren't doing what you want it to do. Or talk about, say, SVB, if like you got a bunch of long dated bonds and you wanted rates to stay low forever, essentially what you're betting on, and then suddenly rates are going up like crazy and you're underwater, then you got to go out and like start raising money. And not moreover, you like really need that money, talking about SVB here, like you really need that money to keep your bank going. The problem is though, is like when you start asking people for like a lot of money, word starts to get out like, hey, I think SVB needs a lot of money, and it's hard to keep things quiet. And, I know I'm talking about things, but I want you to understand like this is a holistic approach. In my point of view in these things is because I want to solve the system, right? I want to solve the problem, not just individual with like whack-a-mole kind of thing. This is sort of why I talk about, say, for example, regulations. If you don't put regulations in place, essentially just encourages people to take bad action. So, Chris is, you're probably thinking, okay, so what kind of regulations could we have? Something like that. So One is be like, for example, with banks, is you could raise the amount of essentially capital that they have to keep on reserve, meaning that, the idea is I give my money to the bank makes money by using my money to essentially loan it out to someone else or make investments, these kind of things, right? The bank profits by holding my money. But the fact is, they're actually not even holding it. They're like lending it out. And sometimes banks are like way, way, way overcommit, way, way, way over leverage, and also to make bad investments. But if you have regulations in place that say, you know what, just for example, guys, you have to keep 50% of the cash in your bank. I'm just saying, for example. This would prevent banks from overcommitting. And if I need to come in and get my cash, it's going to be there because at least they have some cash on hand. But if you say set deposit regulations are like, oh, well, banks only have to have 5% of all the, money that people are depositing, then just imagine just a little bit of people that come in and try to get their cash on, say, a bank run. It doesn't take that long for the banks to essentially fail. Another thing we need to be talking about too, we talk about regulations of banks, is stress tests. The basic idea is that regulators will come in, check your financials, run a bunch of simulations, and then say, okay, if X happens, then you're still going to be solvent. But if X happens, say in this case, interest rates go up by too much, you're not going to be solvent. And essentially, the regulators come in and make sure that you are running a ship that isn't going to sink on just any old change in the environment. This is sort of why we need regulations, and you need a sort of basically a third party to come in. Otherwise, banks will just risk to the hilt, which is not a good thing with other people's money. And this is when you get bailouts and you're like, okay, where's all the money coming from? And this has sort of been the question that I've been wondering myself, is where is the money coming from? And I think sort of the financial markets are reflecting that, where there's a lot of uncertainty out there. Yes, the announcements have been that the banks are getting infusion from the Fed, but it's like a bank loan. I think Credit Suisse had the same kind of thing. It's a loan. But the problem is that, yes, they're going to call it a loan. You're talking about a bank that literally, it's on my SUV here, just filed for bankruptcy. I'm like, do we really expect them to pay it back? And then it becomes a burden on the taxpayers, or maybe the Fed starts printing money again. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't trust it. And this is sort of why I get sort of irritated the whole system, because it goes back to, I don't want to just play whack-a-mole. I want to have decent regulations in place. I give you another example, say talking about the YouTube situation. So guys, I get it. Maybe this particular case, maybe they get out of it. Who knows, right? But the issue is that it's a larger thing, right? And I use the example of, say, Al Capone. Now, I think they got Al Capone on tax fraud. You guys probably know this, but and they couldn't like nail that, you're a murderer, like you're a gangster, and you're doing like all these nefarious things. And they just ultimately got him on this tax thing. And so I think the YouTube thing is situation, the same situation, to where, yes, maybe the case against them is weak, just for example, but they do so many bad things, be it, sell you private stock chatting groups, sell you stock picks, sell you, classes that promise you to get rich, like basically a bunch of scams, like tons of things. It's more than just one thing. Moreover, they're not sorry. And then moreover, now you have a situation to where they were pumping a Ponzi scheme. I mean, you got to get them on something. And this is sort of why it's the same with the banks, same with YouTubers, same with anything, is that I believe we need regulations for things. Otherwise, people will always take a ton of risk and push things to the limit. And so I hope you understand the message of this thing is kind of what I want you guys to think about when we go through this stuff every single day, is just to sort of have a plan in your life that makes sense for you. And I want you to think in terms of holistically plan, right? It's not just about investments. It's not just about stocks. It's about finding a lifestyle that makes sense for you. And for me, and I'm just sharing my personal opinion on these things, is like, live below your means. You don't always have to spend all of your money all the time. Sometimes, and you could argue maybe all the time, is maybe you should live well below your means and start just socking that money away in terms of like really, really safe stuff, just frankly, savings accounts. Unfortunately, and I'm just talking about the savings accounts here. Unfortunately, we live in a society where our banking system is under question. And this is where it like ruptures everything, because people are like, oh my God, if I can't even just do what I consider to be a safe thing, but just saving money and keeping it in the bank, and that falls apart, like, what does that say for our whole society? Do I have to go with Bank of Mattress, right? We always say Bank of Mattress, maybe the safest bank in it all time, right? So you're like, you know what? I'm sleeping on top of my money. No one's touching my money in these kind of situations. But I'm frustrated right now, guys. It's a frustrating time in the markets, because there's just so much bad information out there, and so many people just unfortunately fall into this sort of game of, getting their heart strings felt, tugged out, I guess you should say, every single day. And if you sort of, how can I say, manage your risk, you're not freaking out, if you're not over committing to anything. And also too, focusing on the essentially what I mentioned before, the sure things, right? Focus on making, better sort of gains on your job, right? Your career, trying to get those job skills that you need that will sort of ensure your future. Because the things that we've been seeing lately is just there's been a lot of layoffs and just a lot of bad things happening, financial markets, job markets, bad actors in social media, these kind of things. And I know I'm kind of rambling on a bit, but it's just I get really frustrated. As I also was to say, I get really frustrated, and I'm trying my best here. And I am also really happy and to see you guys every day. I think we have a great community, and I want to keep building that. So I hope you understand where I'm coming from in these things, and I want you guys to be safe. And again, these headlines are really, really scary. SVB filed for bankruptcy, and First Republic, they're diving because they cut their dividend, and this is sort of dragging everything down. So I do appreciate everyone's time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any things that I've said, and understand my point of view on regulations. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.